in this hype of asset creation. You find, even we saw this in JNURM, and that so much focus is there, and we've lost sight of how do we get the maximum juice of from the assets which were created out of this. That's another big challenge. The need for long-term vision, long-term framework vision plans is an absolute necessity. The long-term vision plan must be for 30 years instead of the current practice of formulating master plans and development plans and comprehensive development plans for 10 to 20 years. Short-term plans could be a part of these long-term plans and may be reviewed every 5 years or so. But we need to look at long-term planning, because with the amount of with the extent of urbanization we have, we'll be having to look at least 30 years long-term plans. Now, financing urban infrastructure is another very important point. We have some examples of PPP projects, very small, in urban development sector and water supply projects. I went to inaugurate one, but I never thought we ever had one. And I thought, is it real? So I went there myself to inaugurate it. It was by a French company. And they were having a water supply project in Nagpur. And when I went there, there was a big demonstration. The people were demonstrating because they said, now we'll have to pay. We'll have to pay more. And we've had it at this price, now we'll be paying more. But I believe that people are willing to pay because it's the fear of the unknown. That's the biggest fear. When they see that there's 24/7 proper clean water supply, they'll be willing to pay. There's that hump you got to cross. So whether it's solid waste management, city bus services, in metros, there is a need for upscaling and mainstreaming these initiatives. It has been estimated in the 12th five-year plan that about 13 to 23%, I'd say it should be more than that, of the total requirement of the urban sector can potentially come through PPPs. In the next phase of the JNURM, we propose to further incentivize PPP, and the central share in the case of PPP projects would be enhanced by 20%. We need to be working on a basket of PPP projects, because there's no one-size-fits-all PPP project. It's going to be a basket of models of PPP projects. We can't have a one-size-fits-all. The parameters and viability of a PPP model for a city like Delhi or Mumbai will be very different from a smaller city. So what is this basket? And we've tried. I organized seminars on PPP, delegated to PPP, with countries who got the greatest experience in PPP, and called in all the state governments to come and look at, sit the whole day and understand the various models and build on models themselves. Otherwise, when we try and build models here and thrust it down the state governments, because they are the ones who will implement it, thrust it down the municipalities, they'll never do it. But they are looking for the state government money or central government money. So the best was to make them here, to sensitize them to the importance of PPP. Municipal bonds is another area, and the larger urban local bodies need to be need funds, and this can be done through tax-free bonds. Our larger municipalities, municipal corporations must become bankable. Must become bankable. I got a study carried out that which are our municipal corporations which are bankable and can become bankable easily. I thought I'll get a very dismal answer to this, but I'm very happy, because the report said that there are 4 or 5 or 6 which are bankable, and on the verge of being bankable, there are many more. I don't remember the exact figure, there are many more. So how do we make our municipalities bankable? Because only if they are bankable can we raise money through bonds for capital investment, etc. Now, local self-government should take on a larger role, a more central role in planning cities and towns in order to lead development initiatives that ensure basic needs are met. An overriding principle, and I think this is very important, is to bring people at the heart of the urban agenda. we hope to take this challenge under the 4P framework. The 4P framework being people, private, public partnership. Just not PPP, but 4P. World experience has shown that urban renewal and management, the role of the people in design of projects and partnership is crucial. The capacity to prepare long-term plans and enforce urban planning regulations. How do you, we've got this Delhi, take any city, but if you take the city of Delhi, how do you enforce? We've had the master plan 2021 and it came out in 2007. I had thousands of representations against this master plan. It was announced. And there was one zone which was shown as a no development zone. It exists also today, in which we got our Commonwealth Games village. We've got huge habitation there. So I said, how could this ever come into the master plan? Because it has habitation there for the last 20 years. And thousands of villagers come to me. They said, we are there and we can't even repair our houses because no bricks are allowed to come into this area. No cement is allowed to come into this area. So I launched a revision of master plan. And I thought, let's be transparent about it. I said, whoever makes a representation, we're going to put it on the internet. And with what it's all about, who is he, what's his address. And I got roughly 3,500 proposals for changes in the master plan, which was just barely 5 years old. So to start off with, we had a master plan which nobody was willing to accept or buy or bite. And not only that, how do you enforce such a kind of master plan? It doesn't work. Now Delhi has got some of the most outdated planning regulations and development standards. And paradoxically, that's one of the reasons why enforcement becomes difficult. Because what are you trying to enforce? And when you're trying to enforce, it leads to all kinds of charges of corruption, it leads to all kinds of things because your plan is wrong. In Delhi, we have 1,600 unauthorized colonies. And we are the only country in the world which has a terminology called regularized unauthorized colonies. And I couldn't understand that terminology. How do you have a regularized unauthorized colony? They said, well, you know, we have to regularize it, but it remains unauthorized. Because the master plan is, I said, why do you make the master plan like that? If we were going to do that just 1 year later. So this is the challenge what we are facing. And the question becomes, how much do we regulate? How much do we not regulate? What is over-regulation? What is under-regulation? And which is the best model suited for India? When we try to do something, they say you over-regulate it. But when you over-regulate, you can't enforce. If you under-regulate, it sometimes becomes a free-for-all. So how do you marry regulation and over-regulation, under-regulation? What is the right regulation to have? And regulations affect land values. Regulations affect land values and in most cases lead to phenomenal rise in land prices, making access to land even more difficult. Take the price of land in Delhi. We were looking at building houses for the economically weaker sections. Now with the land price in Delhi, how can you ever build economically weaker sections with the land prices? You have to not take the price of land into account. Then who will pay for the land? The land may belong to the government. But somebody, somewhere, many years later will say, in some audit, we've had these examples, will say that, why did you give this land free, even if it's for the weaker sections? And totally oblivious of the reasons. And we have classic examples of this happening in many areas. That suddenly some audit wakes up and starts pronouncing presumptuous losses and presumptuous and blames it all on policy. So how do you build houses for the economically weaker section with the prices of land today in any part of Delhi. Because you want to give them houses at 5, 6, 7 lakhs of rupees. The land itself which he's selling, going to get it, is worth 10 times that. So he can never build for economically weaker section. It's government land. And this is a huge challenge. Another thing is that we use our land very, very inefficiently. The FAR and FSI, whenever I talk of this, the press attacks me. And I see they're sitting here today also to do the same thing. But they say I'm talking about increased FAR and increased FSI. Now, in India, if you were to take away the mountains, the forests, the deserts, the water bodies, we are a very dense country. We are a very dense country if you were to take away all of these things. We are one of the densest countries in the world. We can't build in our deserts, we can't build in our mountains, we can't build in our forest areas, we can't build in the water bodies. So what are we left with? And divided with the population. So we need to use land efficiently. Now when you talk of using it efficiently, somebody will say that, oh, this means that you will have a higher FAR and FSI. I don't say that. I say we must use land optimally which has the carrying capacity, where we can do capacity building, which has carrying capacity. I'm not suggesting that in defense colony or somewhere you start increasing FAR, but in new areas. In new areas, we've got strange ideas that if we build high-rise in new areas where we can create carrying capacity, we can create sewage. They'll say, yes, we can do all this, but then the fire brigade can't reach there. Because how will the fire brigade, how do they reach in New York? In all those tall buildings. So that meant not changing our building laws, that meant changing the fire laws. But the fire laws say that you can't build more than 6 floors or 10 floors. So the point I'm trying to make is that the challenges before us in India are so profound, so diverse, so diffused. And these challenges come in from all areas. I wanted to talk on strategic spatial planning, but then I think there's not time enough. But one of the points I want to highlight is capacity building. I think this is our biggest challenge, and this is the real game changer. Today, what is happening in our municipalities? Forget that Delhi and Mumbai and Hyderabad, they know how to take care of themselves, they have the skills, they have the talent. But in a municipality, the chief municipal officer is on loan from the veterinary department. And he is the chief municipal officer. He's got no stake in it. There is no dedicated municipal service. So he wants to, he's not interested in municipality. He's not interested in working there. He's interested in being in that town or that small city. A town maybe of 200,000 people. Because his family is there, or he likes that place. So he opts for a deputation. He opts for a deputation to the municipal side. And he comes as the chief municipal officer from the veterinary department. He may come from the agricultural department. There is no dedicated municipal service. So one of the conditions we are laying in our JNURM 2 is that it will be incumbent on states to set up a dedicated municipal service. Because when we talk about capacity building, who will you train? You can't train the veterinary officer. You can't train the agricultural officer. But he's there for 1 year, he'll go away after that. Maybe there for 2 years. So you train him, and he doesn't want to be trained because he's not looking for it. He's looking at something else. So you'll be training for the wrong person, and the right person doesn't exist. So this is going to be one of the major points, and I think one of the biggest game changers. And when we talk of training institutes, the cabinet recently approved the Urban Institute of India, which is a partnership with the private sector. It will be one of the institutes of excellence driving other institutes of excellence. I do hope that that will be, by the time we have a municipal service, we'll have people to train, and this will trickle down to the states. Now, the 10 papers in the book, let me come to the book. The 10 papers in this book by eminent experts in the respective fields tackle the challenges of urbanization from different angles. that of urban planning, infrastructure, finance, and inclusion. Without going into what all these papers are, there's one message which comes through in all these papers, and that's the most important. Addressing the challenges of urbanization in India is ultimately the challenge of institutions and governance. That is the message across all these 10 papers. And that, as I was saying, is most important. While all the papers undoubtedly in the volume undoubtedly highlight the challenges and sound the warning bells on emerging difficulties, they also provide examples of good practice and experiences from within India. We have like land pooling. We're just implementing land pooling in New Delhi. In Delhi, we are starting with this. We worked on this for a long time, and now I believe it's time for it to take off. Previously land pooling was only with government. Now we're trying to bring land pooling into the private sector. So these are some dramatic changes which we are trying to do, and I think we have an enormous challenge before us, urbanization in India, not only in our metropolitan cities, but in our smaller municipalities, where the challenge is also even greater. The 200,000, 500,000, 600,000 municipalities, even the 1 million municipality has a huge challenge before it. That needs to really reinvent itself in all its facets. Before I conclude, I'd once again like to congratulate Mrs. Ahluwalia and other contributors of the book, which gives an incisive insight into the issues of urbanization in India and the path ahead. My congratulations to you and my compliments to ICRIER for the very good work ICRIER has been doing. You've been of great support to my ministry, and ICRIER has done very good work. I think it's the only institute which has done work on urbanization in India.
For sending us to excellent international resource persons who have really contributed to our understanding. Because we had to compress the timing, the minister had to go somewhere. We are not sharing their global perspective here, but we will put up the suggestions that they have made on our website and share that with you. Thank you very much, and may I ask you later.
One of the most difficult things to do after such eminent speakers is to actually come up and say something that's meaningful, and the easy part is that you don't really need to. So that makes my job easier. Urbanization as a discipline and as a focus area has been with SAGE for a very long time. It's one of the core areas that the founders focused on. In fact, Urban Affairs Review, a quarterly journal, completes 50 years in 2014. And this is a great book to complement that same focus area. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Sir, dignitaries in the audience, and of course our wonderful editors and authors. Thank you very much for a wonderful book. Thank you very much for this wonderful evening.
अगर इस पर नहीं सोचेंगे 30 साल तक का नहीं सोचेंगे